Good morning, everybody. My name is Bruce Whitfield, and it's a great pleasure to be with you on this MTN business webinar on this fresh Thursday morning. Great pleasure to have you all joining us, and thank you for taking time out of your diaries in order to do so. We have two speakers for you today. One brand new to MTN, talk about joining at the last possible minute. But Megan Nicholas joined as lockdown happened. We'll also introduce you to Giovanni Chiarelli, with whom I'm sure you're very familiar when it comes to dealing with MTN and MTN business. Today's webinar is being recorded. We will share a link afterwards to make sure that you are not only able to revisit any of the important points that you feel the need to revisit, but you can also share this amongst colleagues afterwards as well, which is an absolutely pivotal part, of course, of this discussion. We're also going to be talking about inviting your questions and your comments. You know how it works. Questions and comments down the side. Type those in at any moment you like, really. I mean, questions are better than comments because they're easier to define and easier to talk about. But it'd be so good to get your questions today. Absolutely anything you want to ask about the miracle of 5G, the rollout of 5G, and how that is going to be able to really help you run your business even better than you do at the moment. My name is Bruce Whitfield. As I said, and I'm looking forward to being with you this morning on this MTN business webinar. At the end of the webinar will be a very short survey. We do encourage you, please, to fill in that survey and do share with us, of course, all of your views today. Today we're talking about the new normal, the effects of COVID-19 and what it's had on the enterprise business, and how you, as C-level executives, have had to change your thinking about the way in which you strategize and think during this time. It's absolutely pivotal, of course, as we see in terms of today's presentation. Let me introduce you first to Megan Nicholas this morning. She joined MTN Business from Telkom. She's got 25 years of experience in the mobile and fixed telecommunications sector, passionate in the areas of strategy and business turnarounds, with a proven track record in enterprise business. Megan Nicholas, you joined as the lockdown started. I mean, talk about timing. It was exceptional timing. Have you met anybody who works at MTN at all?
I've met them all from my laptop, so if I actually have to pass them in the street, I wouldn't have a clue who they are. It's been very tricky, I must say. But
so tell me what the experience has been.
Pardon, Bruce?
Tell me about the experience you've had, this transition that you have made from the dark side to the bright yellow light.
It's exciting. I love being on the yellow side. Great culture. I think I can add a lot of value to MTN. And yeah, it's exciting to be here. I'm really looking forward to making a change. I'm back in enterprise again. I've been on the consumer side for quite a while. So I'm back in enterprise again, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm loving MTN as well. So it's exciting. And starting over COVID. I mean, I think there's going to be case studies done on people like me starting new jobs in the middle of COVID.
Did you have sort of any sort of like, oh my goodness gracious me, brand new job, brand new beginning, all kinds of plans, all kinds of ideas as to how this was going to work out, and not a single thing has gone in the way in which you'd intended? And perhaps bizarrely, it's a good thing, because if this is the new normal, well, talk about hitting the ground running.
So I must say, you know how when you meet people, you build a rapport with people. So when you're sitting in a room together, you build a rapport, you can read body language. I mean, I can be sitting in a room full of people at the moment in the new normal, and they could be rolling their eyes at me and like really just hating every second of what I'm saying. And I have no clue. I just go with it and think everybody likes me. So I'm going to have to just live with that for now.
I'll take that, actually. I'll take that. I mean, if you live in ignorance, absolutely. And what a joyful way that will be to interact. Well, it's good to have you on board, Megan Nicholas. She joined the MTN business team at the beginning of lockdown, as lockdown started. Well, MTN's journey moving towards, of course, delivering South Africa's best network experience, celebrated last week with the launch of the new generation 5G network, delivering higher peak data speeds, ultra low latency, increased reliability, greater network capacity. And Giovanni Chiarelli is a global technology leader in the telecoms industry. And he's led networks and IT across fixed line and mobile technologies. And he's built some of the best technical platforms to deliver superior consumer experience for many years. And I suppose, Giovanni, I mean, this is a great milestone for MTN, the MTN 5G strategy. Where are you in terms of rollout?
Good morning, Bruce. Good morning, everybody. So obviously we are very excited about our launch on the 30th of June. In reality, it's a long journey because probably you remember we announced the first pilot on 5G. It was the 8th of January of 2 years ago in 2018. And since then we had further pilots showcasing 5G in indoor, outdoor, in mobility. But at the same time, we worked a lot behind the scenes to upgrade our core network in order to make it 5G ready, to start a very deep modernization of the access network and the transport network. So I think the 30th of June was a topical moment, but it was just the manifestation of a work that was 30 months and even more long. Where we are today we have launched 5G on 100 sites. It's not yet obviously a huge coverage. However, I think it's quite extraordinary because, as you said, we have done this during COVID times where everything is becoming more difficult, starting from the provisioning of the hardware that has to come from other countries. The deployment on sites obviously is more complex, and so on and so forth. So today we have 5G live in Johannesburg. We have 5G live in Cape Town, in Bloemfontein, in Port Elizabeth, and also in other few towns where we are experimenting the different bands and use cases of 5G.
It's a really exciting time. And I mean, I've often heard of 5G being described as it's not 2 + 2 + 1. It's not 4G + 1. 5G is a fundamentally different proposition. Just replay for me, if you would, please, the fundamental differences between 5G and 4G.
Yeah, so obviously what is very evident, and I think this is the common discussion, is about speed. So we can say that for the first time, we have a mobile technology that can scale above the 1 gigabit per second in terms of throughput, which means fiber lookalike service from this perspective. But this is only the most evident. I think the changes are more profound. So, for example, if you look at latency, the latency is reducing 10 times. So the best 4G network in the country has still a latency of 15 to 20 milliseconds. With 5G, you go to a single digit, so 3 to 5 milliseconds, which is enabling new use cases where the reaction time between what is happening at device level or at the sensor level and what is decided from maybe a machine learning engine or artificial intelligence solution has to become real time. Another super important point that probably we underestimate a little bit is the opportunity to connect more devices. So 4G at the best, for example, can connect 10,000 devices per square kilometer. 5G is scaling it up 100 times, so 1 million devices connected per square kilometer. So you can imagine IoT now is really becoming massive IoT, and on top of that, then combining with the other elements that I was mentioning before, it can create these new use cases that, especially from an industrial perspective, are really bringing the mobile technology one level above. As you said, is not 4G + 1. It's something completely different.
I mean, what's so interesting about this environment, and especially with the constraints in terms of spectrum, how does 5G work within the constraints of spectrum? Explain that to me, please.
Yeah, so that's obviously one of our, let me say, from a technical perspective, I would say pain points. If you allow me, I would spend 30 seconds to introduce the topic, also from my personal experience. I joined MTN at the end of 2016, and I spent obviously the first few weeks in a sort of a quick induction. And I told to my colleagues, look, don't waste too much time, maybe to meet me in person and to explain things. Send me documentation. I'm reading it, and maybe I will put some more intelligent question instead of wasting your time. And then obviously they sent me a lot. And among them, obviously, there was the documents regarding the spectrum allocation and so on and so forth. So I called my colleague after receiving that, saying, look, you have missed something in your documents. I find the spectrum for 2G and 3G. I don't find the spectrum for 4G or LTE. And the guy had to tell me, no, look, this is a very peculiar situation. You are now landing in a country where we have a real spectrum crunch. So, and that was for the 4G era. Now on the 5G era, potentially we face the same challenge. Thanks to ICASA, however, we had the temporary spectrum that was granted for a while since the lockdown started. So in reality, a good part of our 5G launch now is based on the temporary spectrum that we have received in March. And especially for what concerns the so-called golden band, so the 3.5 gigahertz, which from an industry and a standard perspective is today the most developed for the 5G. And you see also the device ecosystem mostly flourishing for that band. Then obviously there are other bands like 700 and 800. Today, unfortunately, they are still heavily interfered from the TV broadcasters because digital migration has not yet happened. And then, and this is also what we have done in the last few months, you can have also a nice coexistence of 4G and 5G in some bands, which is completely new compared to the previous technologies and standards. So you can have it also on 1800, which is primarily a band that in the past has been used for 2G and 4G, and 2100 megahertz, a band that in the past and currently is used for 3G and 4G again. So from this perspective, 5G is more flexible than the previous technology in terms of spectrum allocation, but you need additional spectrum. And especially if you want to scale up to the 1 bit per second speed and above, you need plenty of spectrum.
Absolutely. A great question. And James Farnell gets a prize for being the first person. I don't know what the prize is, James. You get an extra breath of fresh air or something. But James Farnell has come through with the first question today saying, so 5G technology by design cannot travel a far distance. So to get large coverage, MTN will need to install thousands of AP devices expanding many areas. My questions: one, what will the cost impact be onto the consumers? And two, how will MTN roll this out when the existing towers are not enough? Your question there, Giovanni?
Yeah, so in reality, it depends from the spectrum that the spectrum frequency that you use. Yeah, so from this perspective, 5G is not extremely different from the previous technologies. So in essence, when you are using the lower part of the spectrum, as I mentioned before, for example, 700 or 800 megahertz will be in South Africa, you can cover big areas, even bigger than today, where the lower band allowed for mobile technology is the 900 megahertz. Obviously, the limit of those bands below 1 gigahertz is the fact that vice versa, you have not plenty of spectrum, so you cannot reach the speed that I was mentioning before. Yeah, so in order to achieve those speeds above the 1 gigabit per second, vice versa, you need the upper bands and plenty of spectrum. So it's always a trade-off between speed and capacity on one side and coverage on the other side. So I think from this perspective, doesn't differ too much from the previous bands. Definitely, I think, and correctly, you pointed out, there is, however, a need of progressive densification in the future. However, I'm not expecting that we need to scale up 10 times the number of sites that we have today, but probably in time, there will be a plus 50 to 60% of the sites that are needed.
I mean, the politics of 5G, we've seen the politics of 5G. Of course, we know it's caused COVID-19, or at least before I start doing something crazy. We've seen people burning 5G towers because generally people are not, some people are not particularly bright. But there has been an opposition in many communities to having cell phone towers and the presence of cell phone technology in their neighborhoods. There are large swathes, for example, in Cape Town, where residents have simply opposed the installation of masts and things. How do you circumvent that? Everybody wants coverage, but not everybody wants the devices that deliver the coverage in their backyards.
So yeah, we have seen with concern those news, especially coming from the UK. And by the way, they were instigated from some, let me say, some people that in some way also were mentioning their previous experience in technology in some operators, and the reality was a little bit different than the reality. But in any case, in those cases, what was mostly pushed was the fact that, you know, why 5G is dangerous. It's because it's using special frequencies, special bands in the spectrum. And definitely we know that this is not the case, as I said before. So for example, if we look at the 3.5 gigahertz, this band has been used since decades for the WiMAX. You remember WiMAX services? Okay, they were using exactly the same band. Then when we talk about the below 1 gig, 700, 800, typically used for LTE. And so on and so forth. The 28 gigahertz band, which is for the ultra speed, is used today from the microwaves that are connecting several hundreds of our enterprises in the country. Okay. And so on and so forth. So definitely there is no scientific explanation that can support those concerns about 5G is dangerous, and then 5G is also in some way enabling COVID-19 virus.
No, let's not even go there. Let's not even pretend. Let's not even make jokes about it. Megan, a lot of talk about streamlining digital transformation. I mean, everybody, if ever, this crisis, by the way, I mean, I just look at COVID-19 and I look at the timing of the crisis. And frankly, as far as humanity is concerned, there was probably never better timing for a crisis, simply because had this happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago, goodness knows what would have happened in terms of our ability to communicate and function and work, and to deliver in the 21st century. It would have been an absolute mess. So when we look about the streamlining of digital transformation, what does it really mean? I mean, where does 5G come into so much of the rhetoric, and so much of the rhetoric of fourth industrial revolution? I mean, we love talking in South Africa about fourth industrial revolution as our water supplies dry up or as our electricity doesn't switch on. 5G in this context, explain.
So I think 5G is just a better technology. I mean, it just takes us into digital transformations happening. Whether we have 5G or 4G, it was already starting to happen with 4G. 5G just really changes the whole way that we look at things. So, I mean, you know, there's so much that we can do, big data, and looking at the cloud, looking at cloud and looking at data management and storage and all of that. 5G changes that because it allows us to be able to access that in a stable environment. And I think that's what's happened kind of in the past, is that our connectivity hasn't always necessarily been stable. And in order for data management, storage, and big data solutions and all of that, we need 5G. But digital transformation, you know, it's like a buzzword as well, digital transformation. But really what COVID has done has it's accelerated digital transformation like kind of 3 years ahead. And all it is it's taken us from, people didn't even have desks, Bruce. I mean, what they did is they suddenly had to work from home, and suddenly someone was grabbing a table and grabbing a chair and finding a little spot to be able to make a desk, you know. So it really just changed the way we worked. Working from home was never allowed and was really frowned upon, and now suddenly it's our new normal. So, but have you not realized how important connectivity is since we started working from home? I mean, some people didn't even have an internet connection, not even a basic 3G or 4G connection. You know, they were connecting via their handset and everything. So it's absolutely just maybe educated people more on what the future looks like and really what is internet and how important connectivity is. So I think it's really just taken people's mindset into the future and allowed us to operate in a different way. And 5G is critical to that because it will change the way we operate. It'll just make everything better, more stable, faster, and allow us to not worry about speeds, you know, because speed is always we worry about what we can get up, kind of upload and download speeds, you know.
I mean, there are still parts, and I live in a part of the country where if I don't have my broadband on, if I don't have my Wi-Fi on, I get an edge signal, and I get the ring of death
Good old
circling
edge.
and circling and circling. I wonder whether one day we'll look at 4G in the same way as we look at edge. It is the 5G environment that kind of leap ahead, I wonder.
Definitely. I think we'll start looking at 4G in that way that we look at edge a lot quicker than it took us to look at edge. I mean, look at us now. Edge was launched how many years ago? I mean, that was probably 10, 15 years ago, edge. And we still have it. I don't think as transforming to 5G, we'll look at 4G in that way a lot quicker than we ever did with edge. And hopefully that little edge will be gone forever.
We hope so. Giovanni, I mean, how's this going to be an enabler for enterprise? Because, I mean, if we talk about 4G versus edge and 5G versus 4G, the enabling effect of that is stupendous, surely.
It is.
Yeah.
I also think, go Giovanni, it's fine.
Yeah. So definitely, so obviously, if you look at, for example, the vocabulary of 5G, and you know, we are really passionate about acronyms, and sometimes we're building acronyms on acronyms, yeah? The 5G vocabulary has several acronyms that speak specifically the language of the business more than the consumer. As I said before, in terms of use cases, okay, the consumer probably will be appealed from the speed, okay, and after that, what about? And they say, yeah, you know what, low latency, I can do gaming online. Okay, fair enough. And what else? But then the what else, step by step, you start thinking, and I said before, when you talk about massive IoT, when you talk about ultra reliability, low latency, and so on and so forth, all of these use cases are for enterprise, yeah? So definitely 5G per se was designed mostly thinking about enterprise applications rather than consumer. And it happened almost 7 years ago. And after that, obviously, it started developing all the standard set. So definitely, it's a technology that has to find its primary field of application in enterprise. And then as a fallout, let me say, in the consumer space.
I mean, my kids have heard about 5G, and they've heard that you can get driverless cars in a 5G world. So they've asked me to ask when we can have a driverless car, and of course they're referring to their mother, not me, when it comes to their safety inside the vehicle. Where are we? I mean, if driverless cars are the dream, where is South Africa in reaching that dream?
So from my perspective, the first element, and we said before in a nutshell, is the spectrum allocation. So today we have made an investment up front, but if you think about, for example, a shareholder, they could ask me, why did you invest so far in 5G if you have not the certainty of the spectrum allocation? It's really let me say, betting with the future in terms of investments, but the future is not clear. So fortunately, I think our shareholders didn't ask the question so far. Yeah.
I'll
So
send
the
them a
spectrum,
note, by the way. I'll put it onto
please
social
don't,
media.
please,
And if
please
you need it, I
don't.
can do it. I can help.
Yeah, please don't. But that's the first step. Once the spectrum is allocated, then obviously the industrial plan can come. And obviously we have already it, in essence, in a drawer. We're ready to take it out and to make it happen.
Fabulous. Shawnee, I hope I've got your name right, Shawnee. James makes a good point. Mobile network operators also seem to, as a result of this increased infrastructure rollout cost, and oh my goodness me, there we go. Sorry, having a senior moment in terms of the technology. But Shawnee, if you can repost your question, please, because I seem to be struggling to read it. Let's go to Sebastian Mudley's question. Enterprise customers are looking to enhance their SD-WAN infrastructure. I have no idea what I'm talking about, but I'm sure you do, with 5G. How will MTN Business facilitate the enhancements to SD-WAN or WAN?
Yeah, correct. SD-WAN. Definitely, this is the new way of looking at say the device management in the enterprise branches. Yeah, so it's a super powerful technology. In this case, is software defined wide area network. So I think probably you have already seen. We started launching this technology last year. Yeah, there are different tiers. So we have a small scale solution and then a corporate scale solution. We are doing it in partnership with Cisco, but with different technologies provided by them in conjunction with us. So definitely this is the next generation in terms of managing the connectivity in each of the branches that a corporation needs.
Okay, fabulous. Thank you. We are running polls as well, and you'll see those come up on your screen under the polls button. And the first poll question was, will 5G transform your industry? And unless you're in manufacturing ox wagons or in similar sorts of industry, even then, I'm sure it could help your industry. But 100% of you, of course, absolutely spot on in terms of 5G transforming industry. Absolutely, 5G most certainly will transform industry. There's no question about it. In terms of the hardware that you require, Giovanni, in order to run 5G, Shawnee Bauer's question is about whether or not you need to own all of the infrastructure. Rather than own it, would you be a tenant on someone else's infrastructure? We see an increase in collaboration between operators to speed this up. MTN think it's better to compete head on. And maybe this is a great question in terms of where we sit with competition authorities, perhaps in South Africa, in terms of making 5G accessible, affordable, and workable in a place like South Africa.
Yeah, Bruce. So that's a very good question, and again, looking at the other countries that are slightly ahead of us, yes, but I would say in my 3.5 years in South Africa, I think we're really able to catch up on 4G, because when I came 3.5 years ago, we were really far behind. Now on 5G, we are, let me say, very close to the Europeans and the US. They are probably 6 to 9 months ahead, but not more than that. So what is happening, especially in Europe, you have seen that the cost of the 5G licenses has been quite prohibitive in some of the countries. Yeah, there were, let me say, very, very expensive auctions. So based on that, the operators had to rethink, the MNOs had to rethink their business plan on 5G. Yeah. And what they have found is that probably is wiser to combine forces in terms of towers, or in terms of infrastructure in general terms, and differentiate on the service. So it's with a little bit of surprise that we have seen in UK, in Italy, in Spain, for example, number 1 and number 2 MNO in the country joining number 2 or number 3 in a common effort to roll out 5G. Yeah, so they have, for example, combined towers in JVs, yeah, in order to reduce costs, and to speed up 5G, turning again their business case in a more favorable one. So this is something that has to be discussed. Ideologically, I am in favor of that. So I believe that now looking at the landscape in South Africa, it's evident that infrastructure is going to be concentrated more and more. This is quite natural also in many other countries, and the competition is becoming more and more on services. So it's not any more important the fact that I am, as an MNO, covering a location and my competitor is not. Is more important what is the service that I can deliver in that area, and maybe there I have a competitive advantage compared to my competitors.
Got you. Question for you. I'm going to start a poll. Let's see if I can take control of the polls. What is consuming most of your time right now? As a customer of MTN Business, what is consuming most of your time right now? A couple of options for you. Dealing with the impact of COVID. I'm guessing that's kind of busy. Implementing cost containment strategies. That's kind of important. CapEx. Hopefully you're considering CapEx. Or new revenue streams. I mean, what is taking up most of your time right now? Your answers, please, in the polls. I would love to see your responses, please, as you come through with those votes. We'll get to those in just a moment. Megan, I mean, COVID, in terms of its effect on enterprises, what do you see? What are you seeing as the fundamental impact that has happened as a result of COVID-19, other than this short, sharp heart attack? It was, every main artery of business suddenly just clogged up and people stopped breathing. It feels like there's a little bit of breathing room right now, but what have you seen?
So what we saw was suddenly people going from an office environment where all kind of solutions and connectivity revolved around a building or a place. Suddenly now that's not to be anymore. So we saw a lot of corporates kind of needing immediate solutions that they didn't have at all. Most, people still worked off desktops and that, so they didn't have an access to a laptop from home, never mind connectivity.
So judgmental. Jeez, like maybe.
I know, it's terrible. But
even the dog's barking. That's how irritated it is.
See, that's how we love COVID. You can't even muzzle the dogs anymore. I'm telling you, it's so bad. I apologize. There's nothing I can do. I can't yell at him.
It's the new normal, so it's absolutely fine. I was waiting for him to jump up on your desk, as happened to a colleague of mine on ENCA the other day. Her dog sort of appeared in the picture.
Instructions at home to keep dead quiet and just leave me alone. But no, I think it's important to note that people didn't know what to expect. So one thing that we've added a lot of value from an MTN business perspective, I really am sorry about the dog, is
would you like to go and have a word with the dog?
Yes.
Remember to mute your microphone and switch off your camera, and then I'll allow you some quiet time with your dog. Go and do that and then come back.
I'm going to bond and I'll be back in about three minutes.
Exactly. Okay, you go and have a word with the dog, a quiet one and a friendly one. The SPCA did call a moment ago just to check that everything is
exactly.
Off you go and go sort it out. You're polling, by the way. What is consuming most of your time right now? And it's so interesting just how evenly split it is in terms of dealing with the impact of COVID and implementing cost containment strategies. And absolutely everybody is doing this right now. Absolutely everybody is cutting back. Well, everybody except if you're in the public service, because then you're demanding wage increases and there is a disconnect with reality there. But nobody's doing anything on CapEx. Surprise, surprise. And everyone's looking for new revenue streams. And new revenue streams, of course, is what everybody needs. And I mean, Giovanni, it's such an interesting play there because nobody wants to spend any money, but everybody wants to earn more money. In a 5G world, how does this strategy play out? Yes, you can contain your costs. Yes, you can generate new revenues, but you'll also have to spend some money if you're going to be realistic about these things, I'm sure.
Absolutely, and I was reflecting on these results because obviously I have a double hat. Yeah, so I'm also leading the IT function inside the company. Yeah, so I face exactly the same kind of challenges. Definitely the first one, as we said, is the impact of COVID in terms of remote working. So it was so amazing to see our MTN South Africa, almost 4,000 people in 10 days from almost 0 working remotely to 4,000 working remotely. Yeah. So when you say you have to drink your own champagne, this is exactly the case. Yeah, but I think it's working very well, and I have to say the feedback from all the colleagues is extremely positive. So they think that they can manage a little bit better their personal life. They can save time in terms of less commuting on a daily basis and so on. I would say the male colleagues are happier than the female colleagues. So the female colleagues probably have even more pressure from the family in these circumstances if they are around and if they are not at the office. The cost containment definitely it's a big question. How much has to be stringent? Because the future is uncertain. I think that's the biggest challenge that we have today, and all of us have in mind the famous shapes around the reaction of the economy to the COVID and the pandemic challenges. So it will be a V curve. Nobody believes that now. It will be a U curve if you are optimistic. It will be an L curve if you are pessimistic. But definitely it means that you need to build also different scenarios and to keep them always alive in terms of cost containment on one side, but also investments on the other side. And last but not least, I totally resonate also with the new revenue streams. So for us, is also very important to look at that. And by the way, we wanted to launch 5G to give the clear sense that innovation in the country is going on no matter what. Yeah, and there is definitely the opportunity to have technology strategic partners like us, which are investing in any case in the core business and in the adjacent businesses as well.
I like the Nike swoosh recovery. Hopefully we get that. We've had the sharp decline, and hopefully we get a long, steady increase. Geez, like we need it so badly. The dog is under control. I'm delighted to report that.
Thank goodness. Everybody, dogs and kids are under control with strict instructions.
Well, we'll see how good you are at strict instructions. Everybody at MTN can now judge your level of ability to exert authority. So give me a sense of it then, please, if you would, Megan, in terms of the response to ensure business continuity. I mean, we were working in an antiquated environment. MTN Business, in the same way as everybody else, has had to go and rethink the way they do their business. 4,000 MTN South Africa staff went and had to go and work from home. I was chatting to Godfrey Motsa, the chief executive of MTN South Africa, about this, and saying actually he had to tell people to relax a little bit because there was this insane people. I leave home at 7, so I'm going to be at my desk at 7. I get home at 7 at night, so I'm going to stay at my desk till 7. And he had to tell people to just relax a little bit because people would be at risk of burning themselves out. And in this new enabling environment, I wonder whether or not we become more or less productive. How do you help that process?
So I think to start off with as well, I don't know about any of you, but Corlia says here on the chat group, it is now not working at home, it is living at work. And that is so true. Isn't it funny how suddenly you get meeting requests at 6:30 in the evening? So you have meeting requests from 6:30 to 7:30 in the evening, whereas when you're at the office, that doesn't happen. You know, you kind of stop at 5:30, 6, and then you'll work within the office environment, but not in meetings. So I think there's a big thing with all of this on how to get the balance right. I think with all of us, it's how to get the balance right. And The new normal, I don't know what the new normal is, and I don't think any of us know what the new normal is, but I find that productivity, we're expecting a lot more from our people. So ordinarily you would go for lunch, just even if it was down to the canteen to grab a bite to eat. Now suddenly you're taking your laptop to the kitchen with you, making your sandwich and kind of going back to your desk with your sandwich and your laptop, you know. So I just really feel that we haven't got that right. I think we are working, I'm working a lot harder, as in so many more meetings. I'm probably getting another 2 or 3 meetings in a day, in a back-to-back day. So I'm sure that everybody that's on this is feeling exactly the same, you know. But just one thing on MTN is that we really, and what I'm most proud of is that we were able to just mobilize. We saw what was coming. The teams just got together, and one thing I must say, and hopefully a lot of our customers on this call can agree with me, is that we managed to get stuff together that would ordinarily have taken us months. We got it together in 2 weeks, and we were executing solutions like crazy. I mean, it just showed us the capability that we had, and that's where it really all comes into play, you know, and that's where the fast tracking and the accelerating all comes into play. So we did excellently on ourselves as well as for our customers. I mean, here we've got 50, 60 customers on the line that we helped get in this position that they're able to get on this call today, you know. So we've really done well from an enterprise point of view. We read the scenario and we actioned quickly, and I'm proud of that.
It's so interesting, isn't it? I mean, one of the early memes in this crisis is, what forced your digital transformation? Was it management, demands from staff, or COVID-19? And suddenly, our capability and our ability to leapfrog 4 or 5 years has been done in 3-4 months, and it's nothing short of extraordinary. Time for another poll. I feel a poll coming on. What have been some of the top tech investments that you've had to implement during COVID? And I would like your votes on that, please. What are the top tech investments that you've had to implement during COVID? Have you had to spend more on cybersecurity, on data analytics, which would be useful? Work from home solutions suggests we've all had to do it. I'm guessing there'll be a lot of that, or network infrastructure. We'll see the votes coming through in just a moment on that one, and we'll come back to it there as well. And to you, Giovanni, a question on the change of priorities for C-level executives. Suddenly, management was all about at the office, making sure everybody arrived and was given a task, and continued in their tasks and had their meetings. But as Megan has been telling us, she's getting an extra 2 or 3 meetings in a day. And I wonder if that's productive even. Are we meeting more because we feel we need to be connected because we're so far apart? So we're having more and more of these kinds of gatherings. C-level priorities, what are you seeing?
So I think definitely the leadership style has to change dramatically. Yeah. But obviously, in which direction? That's the big question. Obviously, being a C-level, usually you have colleagues reporting to you who are also senior guys. Yeah. So obviously for the C-level coming up from the ranks is mostly to avoid to be too much hands-on. Yeah, I think many of us, especially the technology colleagues, have the tendency to be too hands-on, and to leave let me say the team breathe and contribute, mostly based on the results rather than on the control. Now the situation is slightly different, I would say. People are demanding you, to be visible. So in some way you could interpret this as this counterintuitive, because they want me to control more what they are doing. I don't think it is the case. So they just want more attention. That means you need, as an executive, to be closer to the personal needs of your people. Yeah.
No, I think it's such a good point. I mean, Megan, it's all well and good if you've got a team in place and everybody knows everybody else, and kind of you go and work home and you go and do remote work for a bit, and maybe you pop into the office once or twice a week, and that's kind of cool. Gives people the space they need, allows people to live a little, allows them to work independently. That's fine. But then you have your experience and you come into a brand new environment. Sure, you know a lot of people, you've been in the industry for a long time. But that cohesiveness of teams over long periods of time becomes a lot more complicated in this world than it was in the cozy meeting face-to-face world.
Yeah. So, the most difficult thing probably also has been, how do I meet people? I know it sounds bizarre, but I'm dealing with these people, my colleagues on the same level, a team. I've got a wider team that doesn't necessarily report to me. Now, I've had to proactively go out there and meet them. So I've had to arrange one-on-ones and be able to see what do they do, how do they fit into the equation. You can't see politics playing out, and we all know corporate politics plays out. There's nothing you can do about it. It's life, right? And here I am kind of sitting oblivious on the other side. But to be honest, I've just really gone out there, and one-on-ones are important, so it fills up a lot of your time. And you have to listen 10 times more in meetings because you haven't been exposed to it. And remember, you're going into a culture virtually. I'm coming into a culture from a virtual aspect. I don't even know, I've been to our offices once. That was when I went for my interview. I've never been to our offices since then, so it's definitely been interesting, but wow, it's made me realize how important technology is and how important we are as a solutions provider to our customers, to have allowed this to happen. So no, it's been interesting, definitely, Bruce. I'll write a book on it one day, starting in COVID, in a senior position, not easy.
No, I'm sure. Your polling results really interesting in terms of the top tech investments, and I think fairly predictable as an outcome. 2/3 of you work from home solutions. It was the emergency thing. 2 days before lockdown, I went to go and see some guys at a business called Get Smarter, and they do global education programs based in Cape Town, and they have Harvard work streaming in and work streams from Cambridge and Oxford and everywhere, and this is the hub of the global operation. And they had sent 600 people home with UPS devices and connectivity, and everybody had to do it and had to do it quickly. Big companies having to send thousands of people home to do their work, as MTN had to do itself. Of course, cybersecurity becomes critical in that environment as well. Some data analytics. I'm surprised there's not been more on data analytics, simply because everybody is operating differently now, and we have to learn differently and work differently. So those are some interesting a bit of feedback there as well. Psychological impacts. James Farnell, who types fast, says the psychological impact on staff is very difficult to balance, but staff need to be able to switch off. And I think that goes to something we have spoken to already this morning. I'll open it to you, Giovanni. I mean, the new normal, what is it for enterprises? What does the present into the future look like relative to what we had all of those 4 months ago?
So let me say, first of all, I think it's quite difficult to define what is the new normal. Yeah. So let's think about once the pandemic is over, that means we have proper vaccine to manage it. Yeah. So that probably it's another 9 months or 12 months from now. Reflecting on that and talking to the colleagues, they already say we'll never go back to the usual Monday to Friday to the offices. Yeah, that's very clear. So it will be by far a more flexible way of working, and some of the colleagues were saying way of living probably as well. Definitely always on, always connected. It will be even more important, but also the ability to decide when to be connected and when to be disconnected. Yeah. So in any case, connectivity will be crucial. Fully digitalized processes will be crucial, because then you will have obviously a lot of hybrid configurations. So somebody is working maybe from the office, somebody is working from home. That means at the end of the day, the organization will continue to be distributed. Yeah. So connectivity, digitalized processes, the capability in terms of cybersecurity, all of them will be heavily enhanced compared to the way of working that we have today.
And part of that working, I mean, Megan, Shawnee Bauer making a comment again saying we had a virtual braai day. We sponsored large braai packs so that the teams could include their families, and we did a team's braai call. Everybody showed their fires, etc. It was a great way to reconnect. And people have had these fabulous meetings where they've sent packets of You Cook to different, to clients, for example, and everybody had to cook their meal and show off their meals and stuff. And so there's a huge amount of creativity happening, of course, in terms of the way in which people connect. I wonder whether or not 5G can carry the braai smell virtually, though. Then I would understand that that would be all you would need from 5G is just to get the smell of braai sausage, and then I'm a convert completely.
Absolutely, agreed.
But it's wonderful, but I think we'll kind of get over that kind of connecting eventually. I think it's nice and fun in the beginning. You miss people, and that's at the end of month 1. And then you do it again at the end of month 2. And by the end of month 3, people are going, okay, fine. I'm over this now. I want a Friday afternoon drinks party at the office, please.
Exactly.
With an Uber thrown into the mix.
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, we're humans, right? So we can only, I mean, it's still a novelty, to have a virtual braai and all these kind of things. I mean, I've just finished doing a degree, and I don't want to virtually graduate. I want a cap and a gown, and I want to be there on the stage, and I want everyone whooping for me. So I think the new normal, none of us have a clue what it's going to be, but we're going to have to kind of get back to where we interact as humans. That's what we do, But one big thing, Bruce, I think that we're going to have to work on a solution around, and we're already looking at it, is the load shedding. Because you can have great connectivity, and if we continue load shedding as we do, I mean, have we felt it in the last 2 weeks as MTN, people disconnecting from meetings, not being able to get in. So I think that's going to be a big challenge for us to assist our enterprise customers in with this load shedding, whether it be backup batteries on your routers, whatever it may be. But I think that's definitely going to be something that we're going to have to look to, because it will really, it's messing this up, which it hasn't done. We've been able to do it very comfortably. So I think we need to, that's going to be one big thing we need to look at. And I don't think some people will never go back to the office. I think some parts of business will always work from home, because we've also seen that maybe it's better. Some people can work from home because they're more isolated and they don't need a big team to work from. But I'm looking forward to getting back to people again and being able to interact, but I don't think it's going to look the same as we left it. It will definitely be a different place that we go back to.
I mean, how can you climb the corporate ladder if you can't physically pull the person above you off it?
Exactly.
Come on. Where is you need Shakespearean style drama here, and you can't do Shakespeare digitally, I don't think. Giovanni, question here.
Their personalities.
Exactly, a bit of character, a little bit of water cooler with masks. It's not the same, but it'll come. It'll come, Megan. You'll be all right. Giovanni, what impact was on cybersecurity pre and during COVID, please? Because I would assume that the guys who sit wherever they sit in their basements, in their underpants, smoking cigarettes and drinking illicit booze and hacking into work networks must have had a field day, or potentially had a field day, in a world where suddenly chaos reigned and where cybersecurity would have been, at least for a period, a bit more lax as everybody went home and everybody had to connect to networks. It would have created a feeding frenzy, potentially.
Yeah, so that's a concerning trend. So I think from this perspective, the key indicators are showing that the cyber attacks are raising very, very significantly. Yeah. So and it's due to the fact that a very, very distributed way of working is creating additional challenges. Yeah. So we have seen cases in in the environment regarding, for example, even the famous VPNs that are not up to the right level, companies without, for example, two-factor authentication. Another challenge is the fact that often, due to the fact that previously the company was not allowing remote working, the employees had not company laptops. Now the companies are saying, okay, you know what, you can use your laptop. Okay, fair enough. But what is the level of protection that is embedded in that laptop or in that device? That is becoming a challenge. So definitely it's a concerning trend. The defenses have to be even stronger at this stage for what we see is happening in the cyberspace.
What is the cost implication then for businesses? Because businesses with thousands of staff have suddenly got a whole new series of real world problems to deal with, but there's also surely a significant cost implication too when it comes to implementing new policies, new processes, new cybersecurity measures to ensure that the networks remain solid and stable. You can't afford to not do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So from this perspective, internally in MTN, we have been very, very deliberate on that since years. Yeah. But what we see looking also at the external environment is that definitely those investments in cybersecurity or information security, maybe better to say, has been very often deprioritized because there was not a clear, let me say, an evident return of the investment. So it's quite clear that companies have invested maybe less than 1% of their total investments in cybersecurity, which is definitely a big problem. Yeah, so it has to be between 5 and 10%. The investment in cybersecurity compare your total investment if you want to keep it healthy and with a good level of protection.
Right, time for another poll, I think, this morning. What is your organization's top priority driven by technology? What are your organization's top priorities driven by technology? Is that to enable digital business, to improve customer service, to develop or take to market new products and services, or to automate processes across the business? I mean, this idea of automation is an incredibly attractive one, Megan, isn't it? I mean, this idea that you can automate so many processes that previously you would have either been reluctant to do because it might cost you some jobs, or it might, there was just a cost associated with it and you didn't really understand what you did and didn't know. Suddenly, your business priorities do have to shift quite significantly, I would suspect.
They do. And, you know, when we talk about transformation and digital transformation and all of that, it's not always about a technology. And that's often where people get confused, is they have they look at a digital transformation and they put it with the IT guy, you know, or the CIO, whatever. And to be very honest, digital transformation doesn't necessarily, technology is one small part of it. Are your people ready to transform to this automated world? You know, so you can have an automated world, but are the people in your organization ready for that? You could have people that have been working for you for 25 years and they've been doing the same job and they don't want to do anything different or in a different way. And that's what automation is. It doesn't necessarily mean that you having less staff or anything. Something that could have taken you, a simple thing like a report. A lot of people run a lot of reports overnight because it takes that many hours. You know, automation changes all of that. Suddenly a report that would take you 3 or 4 hours and you need to run it overnight when the connectivity is better, then suddenly with automation, you can do that in 4 minutes. And it's changing the world. So it allows people to be more productive and more efficient. But how do we prepare our staff for that? Because they fight it. And that's also why digital transformation is taking so long, because staff are fighting it. So this way that we're working now has shown people that digital or transformation or connecting differently doesn't mean you have to lose your job and you have to fight it. You know, you need to actually embrace it. And also, just, you know, with bots and that kind of thing, we're able to answer customers and give a much better customer experience, because with automation, the information is at our fingertips. And secondly, a bot allows you to be able to speak to a customer, not necessarily over a telephone. You can do it via WhatsApp or remotely or via the web, and it allows us to get back to them quicker and to give solid answers, because it's pulling from a whole lot of information that we're giving you the correct answer, not the answer that you think is correct, So I think this whole thing it's a big machine, digital transformation, and this has definitely accelerated us, but there's so much more to go. And I think it's made everybody look at things differently, from CEOs to CIOs, and realize that there's a place in an organization for a digital person to look at us holistically and not in silos in our corporations.
And so, I mean, where should responsibility sit then, Giovanni? I mean, is digital transformation a technical issue? Is it an HR issue? Is it a financial issue? Or is it a CEO issue? I mean, often the biggest dinosaur in the business will be the CEO because they've been around longest. I said that. Not in your case, of course. But whose job is digital transformation within the business?
Yeah, so I can share the MTN experience, and from this perspective, now we have an executive that is fully dedicated to strategy and transformation, for example. So definitely, I think that if you look at the broader scheme, this is triggered by the CEO himself or herself. Yeah, but definitely, then there is the point of we have 24 hours per day and 7 days per week. So to see the CEO really as the constant engine for the digital transformation is also difficult. Yeah, there is potentially a lot of day-by-day activity, a lot of governance, a lot of stakeholder management, a lot of customer management, and so on in the CEO diary. So we have found this solution that I think it's a good compromise. Yeah, and definitely, as you said, as Megan said, this is not a CIO or CTO job only. And we have seen those transformations, digital or pre-digital transformations that have been led by CTOs and CIOs, unfortunately failing, because it's not just a matter of a new technology, it's a matter of embedding a new technology in the business, in the services, in the products, in the processes of a company.
Dare I suggest, Megan, that COVID-19 and let's park the health fears and the tragedies that families are going through just for a moment if we can, but COVID-19 becomes potentially the biggest enabler for digital transformation that this industry could ever have hoped for, that big business could ever have hoped for, that small business could ever have hoped for, because it's been forced on us. A couple of months ago, as we were going into this, I was chatting to a chief executive of a company who was saying, they're scaling back their head office, and they've, at the moment they have office space for 40,000 people, and their new offices next year are going to have half that amount of space because people are going to have to go and work from home. And they were receiving huge pushback. People didn't want to do this. And then a couple of months, I spoke to him about a month ago, and I said, so how's the digital transformation coming? And he went, it's brilliant. Everyone's going home. They realized how great it is. And actually, we don't know if we're going to fill the new office because the new office space that we're creating, because actually people have wised up to the fact that the future is now and the future has been brought forward half a decade. So I wonder whether or not COVID-19 and the pandemic and the lockdowns is actually, it's not a boon right now, by no stretch of the imagination, but 5 years from now, we look back at this time and we go, that was actually a net positive for business. I wonder.
So I 100% agree with you. I really think that COVID has shown us what we can do completely differently. And it would never have happened. It wouldn't, even in 5 years' time, we wouldn't have been able to get to this point that we've got to now in 3 months, to be very honest. But you know what it's like. Situations force you into that position. And as humans, we just adjust. It's adapt or die. We had to adapt, right? So although it's a negative from a health point of view, honestly, for our industry and for just looking at things from a digital perspective, it's completely transformed it. And, you know, lots of people were not interested in working from home. Bosses were not interested in allowing their staff to work from home, because how can I trust you if you're working from home? Suddenly, overnight, we just see how good we really are, you know. The other big thing I think it's going to change is where we used to travel so much, irrelevant of when COVID says we can start traveling all the time again. I think this is going to be a lot more of our new norm. Whereas before we would have got on an airplane and gone to Cape Town, now we're going to start having team meetings because we've adjusted to them and we're comfortable with them now. Who even knew how to work teams, to be very honest, besides maybe one or two IT guys before we went into this environment? Now suddenly it's like, can you hear me or whatever? You know, we professionals now, teams. We know how to mute people when they're coughing in the background. And so really,
when the dogs bark, yeah, we haven't figured that one out yet.
And now the hardy-dars were going over, and I thought, oh God, if you guys hear the hardy-dars, there's nothing I can do about them. They do not listen to me. They're not interested.
Two short, sharp blasts of a shotgun sorts. What
Can you
are your
think of me?
What are your organization's top priorities driven by technology? Enabling digital business, I think that one is a foregone conclusion. Improving customer service, delighted. Developing and taking to market new products and services is interesting because that's a very low barrier there. And automating processes across the business. I wonder if a year from now, developing, taking to market new products and services is the biggest part of that, because we've got over the crisis, Giovanni, we've got over the survival basis of this, and we go full circle and we bring it back to 5G, and suddenly in this new world that we are in and growing in, perhaps that developing and taking to market new products and services expands quite dramatically, because suddenly we've got this ability to do it. I'm not too sure that we've even begun to imagine the difference that 5G brings to us versus previous generations of connectivity.
Yeah, and I think in some way history is repeating, yeah, because when 7 or 10 years ago in different countries we launched 4G, yeah. The question at the time probably was similar, so everybody was looking at the famous killer application. So what is the killer application of 4G or LTE that is driving the adoption of the new technology? And I think at this stage, a similar question for 5G. So from my point of view, the important point is to look at the fundamentals that we have already discussed and what are the use cases and the scenarios that 5G can enable, especially in the enterprise environment. And we say massive IoT, for example, is becoming a reality. The ultra reliability is also an important element that is allowing remote control in real time together with the low latency. And obviously, as we said before, also the extreme speed and throughput that you can achieve, and you can substitute fiber for the first time with the mobile technology. So this is very clear. Now, this is like the pillars of a building, and now you need, and we need to build together the next element and the next floors of that building. And this will come in time, I think, through strong partnerships between our clients and us, in order to design those new services that are really serving the purpose of the enterprises for the next 24, 36 and months, and then for the next 5 years.
Cool. Giovanni, enterprise services required post-COVID. I like the way people are talking post-COVID, like there's a finish date and then it'll all be fine after that. And frankly, we don't know how long this blooming thing lurks around, waiting on surfaces and dark corners and in damp sort of crevices waiting to nab us. But there will be a post-COVID period. There's a post-everything period, and we'll get through it, whether it be 6, 12, 18 months from now. What are going to be the enterprise services that are going to be needed in this new world as we become more and more used to this world?
So I have not a crystal ball from this perspective. But if you look at what we said before, digitization and automation, yeah, this is definitely 5G is enabling, deeply enabling those new solutions. Yeah, if we think about, as I said before, remote controlling of industrial plants, this can happen through 5G. If you look at about the private networks, yeah, as the one and not, again, 5G is formidable in that environment. If we think about, I was quite shocked. A few months ago, I was talking with colleagues working in the mining industry, and they were telling me that in the mines they were still communicating with walkie-talkies. I said, "What?" Yeah, that's the reality. Yeah, so how do you think that you can control, for example, vehicles from remote, avoiding to put at risk the life of your employees with such a technology? Yeah, and vice versa. We think that with 5G connectivity, you can do that, for example. And then going to the futuristic approach. So you were mentioning before self-driving cars. Obviously, that's the future, but it will come. It will come the future of the surgery led from a surgeon that is remote from the patient. Maybe in the mid long term, but in the short term can really happen. The fact that you can transmit diagnostic images very quickly and with very high definition that can really help doctors to diagnose with the best specialists in the countries and what is happening to their patients and so on.
I mean, it's such an exciting time that we're moving into, and Martin Idaris on the Q&A platform this morning. On the chat box, by the way, anybody who wants to ask a question as we come toward the end of this webinar, and again, thank you so much for your participation. We've had some very active participants and some of you a little less active, but we've got a couple of minutes to go and a couple of minutes to ask absolutely any question in terms of the environment in which we are operating, the environment into which we are going, your capabilities, the capabilities of MTN Business to help you on that journey. That is what the chat box is for. So let's get your questions in. And so we'll put those questions to Giovanni and to Megan for you this morning. Digital transformation is also a cultural change. I would argue it's 95% cultural change. The tech sort of, Megan, takes care of itself. It is about, and we've had enforced change, and it's about making the culture stick, and it's about making it normal to work in this way. How hard is that likely to be in an environment that opens up quite slowly, because people like yourself want to get back to the office and get to the socializing and the argy-bargy and the day-to-day grind and the swapping of ideas spontaneously, rather than having to first put in a code and get it wrong and then backspace and put it in again. You like the feisty engagement of work. How sticky does this digital transformation become? Maybe that's the question.
So remember, technology has no emotional feelings. It's there. We can launch it, we can do it, we can make it work. We've got a lot of great engineers that make it work. A transformation comes with culture change, right? So it's the people, but the minute we throw people in the mix to technology, that suddenly everything becomes complicated. So 100%, Madeleine's right. It is an absolute culture change. And it starts from the top, as in how important does the CEO see digital transformation as? And like I said earlier, when we were discussing it, I believe that it's a digital transformation person that looks at business holistically, that doesn't know how to put the nuts and bolts together in technology, but they understand commercial business, they understand, and it's not HR, it's not anything that we have now. In fact, it needs to be a new position that needs to be created to look at business holistically across the board to stop the silos, because we all have the silos in our corporates. You know, my digital transformation looks amazing. I don't know about yours, Bruce, and we work together, you know, and you're like, oh my God, at the end of the day, we have to do this for the best of MTN. Or for the best of your business. So I think it's absolutely a cultural change. And once we decide what is that and where does it sit and who owns it holistically, I think that's when the the driving of it becomes real, you know, because the technology is amazing. Technology is there. I mean, look at 5G. And what we can do with 5G is mind-blowing. Also, it brings into play IoT. I mean, we haven't spoken a lot about IoT, but you know, there's so many ways now that we can start to help business be more efficient, give a better customer experience. One example that I used was in a retailer. There's a big issue with getting food from the distribution center to the actual fridge, right? And in between that process, apparently there's between 20 and 25% wastage. Now, IoT and 5G will fix that. We can track that little piece of food all the way till it gets to the fridge, and we can tell you where you're having wastage. And if it's being stuck out for an hour in the sun, that is actually where your food is going off, you know? So IoT also is big. That we can start to look at this, and the applications we can start to look at with 5G can really start changing. I mean, it starts changing the way we look at life.
Help me understand in small bite-sized chunks, please, that connectivity and how it's actually going to work, because we've been told for years that this is coming, that you'll have a Samsung fridge. Your Samsung fridge is going to smell that the cheese is beginning to go off somehow, and then we'll be able to tell you where the bacteria crept into the process at some point in this. Practically, how does it work? It's very nice to know the theory, and we've heard the theory for a long time, but in practical terms?
So practically, in the food situation, what we could do, you put the food in the distribution center on a trolley. So say it's all the macaroni and cheeses for a retailer. You put it onto the trolley, and from the distribution center, it stays on the trolley. We track the trolley. Where you see where the wastage comes in is perhaps, why is the trolley standing still for an hour in a temperature, because we can do the temperatures as well, in a temperature of 28 degrees. Because by the time it's getting to the fridge, it's getting down to a 15-degree temperature, but somewhere along the line, the food is going off. So we would be able to track the food from distribution to fridge via SIM card and via an application to say, well, it's at this point that your food is actually going off. So if we could get rid of that hour that is standing in the 28 degrees, then you will only have 5% wastage. And do you know the savings to retailers? It's a massive, massive, massive saving because they've got so much wastage. So that's a practical example of how we in enterprise can make a difference. I think the Samsung fridge story is a lot around consumers, and where I see it more fitting a consumer's life is more around, I want to come home and put my lights on. You know, I want to know that when I come in, I can put my alarm off or check in my house from my cameras if everything's okay. So I think that's where IoT and kind of the 5G is going to make a big difference to our lives.
Okay, so that's a nice practical application. I mean, from a South African perspective, your second consumer example is a very good and useful one. And as for the switching on the lights by the time you get home, I mean, that's a bit hit and miss. I'm not sure even 5G can solve that problem. That's more of a...
Absolutely. If Eskom's not playing along, there's no lights.
Exactly. But at least we'll know. As long as our cell phone is charged before we go. Our survey link is live. If you would like to fill in our survey, that would be great, please. We need you to do that before you log off from today's gathering, please. A question for both of you, perhaps. Giovanni, to you first. In terms of budgets, we're very, very clear in one of the earlier survey questions that we asked. And that was, where are you seeing what sort of activity you're most engaged in? And most people are cutting budgets at the moment. Most people are cutting costs in order simply to survive for as long as they need to before they either figure out a new way using 5G tech or a new way of doing business until they can then focus on growth once again. But we're not in a growth mindset right now. We are very much in a constrained mindset. We're in a cost-cutting mindset. We are in this world of constraint. And so in our budgets are being significantly cut due to fear of the unknown. We've had to look for savings. What have been the best savings in terms of ICT spend that you guys have seen with clients? Giovanni, you first, and then Megan, pick up straight out of him, please, if there's anything else that needs to be said.
Yeah, so obviously we need to look at that from an holistic perspective. Again, I can go to our approach in MTN. We have not stopped investing. The point is to set up the priorities, to really set up the priorities and to invest first in what we believe is really fundamental, and maybe slightly delay what is today less promising for the future, or a little bit more uncertain. And on that, the element of efficiency can also help. So be able to be more efficient in order to reinvest what you save. That's a very important discussion that has to happen at the board level in each company, and then executive committee level, because I think we cannot compromise the future. If we don't invest, the risk is that we will precipitate in a negative spiral, which is definitely not just dangerous, is deadly. Yeah. So from this perspective, we cannot allow it happen. So I hope that I have answered to your question.
Thank you. Megan, do you want to add to that?
I do. So, Bruce, the biggest thing that our customers have come back and asked us is how can we save money? So obviously they've had a bit of bill shock in general because of the way that they are kind of communicating. And now, instead of necessarily going through a VPN, a lot of now suddenly using your APN to its maximum. And let's say 4 months ago, they were using maybe 1 terabyte of data, and that was huge. Now suddenly people are using 25, 30 terabytes of data. So I think the biggest thing where MTN has been able to add value to our enterprise customers is to say to them, how can we help you? You know, we've looked at your bundles, and a lot of our customers we've put onto bigger bundles so that they can save money that way. We also have had to, in some instances, reduce certain kind of links that they've had, and really put more kind of other links up, like the APN stuff and that. So I think that's been the big thing, is how can we save money? How can we do things differently? So we've had to be very proactive in looking at the way they consume data, and how can we proactively try and help our customers not spend as much money. And that actually, as we speak, we're putting together 2 or 3 new solutions to assist our customers in using data more efficiently and more effectively, and being able to assist with cost saving, because that's been a very pressing issue for all the CIOs. I mean, I'm sure a lot of the people on this conference call now will agree with me that that's been their most pressing issue, and giving them sleepless nights, I'd say, is the cost implication.
Yeah, costs. I mean, costs are absolutely paramount right now. Question from Marika, and this is to you, Giovanni. In terms of cloud migration and enterprises, just talk to us about cloud migration, please, because it's another big topic at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's a formidable technology and tool. Yeah, so all the CIOs have to look at that with attention, and I'm sure they are already doing. Definitely, most of the industries doesn't make any sense to have any more internal data centers. Yeah, and there are, let's say, more specialized service providers that can do that by far in a more efficient way, more scalable, and so on and so forth. Again, connectivity obviously is becoming paramount in even more in that configuration, and security as well. So cloud definitely has to happen together with obviously strong connectivity and stronger cybersecurity capabilities. I think this is something that is not just unstoppable, but is really beneficial from a technology perspective.
Finally, Janssen's question is an interesting one and a contentious one in the world of hardware, of course, where there have been questions around certain hardware providers in the world. Huawei comes to mind, as Finally points out on the public chat box there, the USA and UK raising questions about 5G equipment. I mean, when it comes to any hardware provider in the world and whatever the capabilities of that technology are, just some thoughts on it, Giovanni?
Yeah, so that's a super good question, because all of us, obviously, we are looking at the news, and we have seen what has been the escalation in terms of tension that started more than 1 year ago when the US trade agency sanctioned ZTE, so a smaller Chinese provider that, however, is very active, especially on the mobile technology. And by the way, their technology is good. Yeah. So that was the first signal of a commercial war that was starting in the telco industry for the telco hardware and software providers. Now, obviously, the level of tension has been raised because the US started targeting Huawei. And definitely we know, I think it's not a mystery, Huawei is the biggest supplier in the world when we are talking about mobile and fixed line technology. So definitely that's an interesting conflict between the two superpowers. Yeah. And now today we are looking at Huawei, but then we can really also think about even more complex scenarios, because we know that also the Europeans and the US telco technology companies have most of their factories in China. So what could happen is if China is retaliating from this perspective against the Western companies and so on. So as you can imagine, from a business risk management perspective, we have modeled all those scenarios, and I would say to our customers, please be comfortable, because all of them have been explored, and potentially we can trigger action plans to mitigate each of them. One important element also to consider is that today in none of the network domains we have a single provider. So for example, in the access network we have Huawei, but we have also Ericsson and ZTE. When we are talking about transmission and transport, we have Huawei, but we have Nokia as well. When we talk about core network, we have Ericsson and Cisco, and so on and so forth. So I think definitely that's the at this stage the best way to manage the risk, in the sense that we have not a single provider per domain, and on the other side being well prepared with all the simulation scenarios and action plans that can be triggered in case the escalation is becoming a proper commercial war.
Okay. I mean, what are the prospects? I mean, do you look at it and you say to yourself, there's big trouble coming? Or like most things, common sense ultimately prevails, people calm down, and it all kind of works itself out? What is your, I know you don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah. So
in terms of your experience of this industry.
So what I am expecting as most probable scenario is that obviously there will be potentially a further escalation, but everybody at the end, especially from a political perspective, will avoid to hurt, let me say, the entire industry, because this is not becoming a telco, let me say, only issue. It can potentially impact everybody in the business. So I think the reason and the positives will prevail at a certain point.
Fabulous. Before we wrap up, there is a survey button, bottom right-hand corner of your screen. Just click on that survey button, please. And if you could, the organizers of today's MTN Business webinar would be very, very grateful if you would take the time to provide some feedback. As we wrap up, Megan, last word from you today on the wonders, frankly, of this new normal that we're beginning, I think, to experience the beginnings of. If we're blown away by what we're doing today relative to what we were doing 4 or 5 months ago, what lies ahead? Because I'm kind of more excited about the future today than I was 4 or 5 months ago, because it just does feel fun, funky, fizzling, and different.
It does, agreed. And that's why I don't think COVID's been all bad, you know. I think that it really has made a big difference to us. Sorry, now I'm getting...
Yeah, I know, get a cup of tea. Are you lucky? Could we have one too, please?
My family didn't get the memo. I'm very, very sorry. Oh, gosh.
I love the
I'm never
role
going to
play,
be
by the way.
invited
I
back,
love
Bruce.
how you try to normalize the new normal. You've done incredibly well. Your acting skills are remarkable. You've been spectacular. You really have.
I'm not going to be invited back again. Are you mad? They're going to keep me away from all of these sessions. No, I'm excited for the difference. And honestly, even I know this is going to sound crazy, but from a technology point of view, it's added a whole new flavor to what we do, which is great because no one even, I mean, hardly anybody ever spoke about APNs and terabytes of data in the cloud and cloud management. And yes, we did from an IT perspective, but people are talking about that normally now, you know. I mean, even just the guy on the street knows what an APN is now. So for me, I think the exciting part is what it looks like for us from a solutions point of view. You know, I really think that we'll be able to offer a lot more to our customers. We've been ready. The customers were not ready to take what we were ready to offer. So the good part is it's shown them that we were ready. We were able to execute quickly, and now we're just building quicker and faster than we were before. So I am excited about that, and I'm looking forward to being able to offer the enterprise solutions that they want to accept now. You know, it's not like, if it ever happens, it's happening. It's now. You know, that's the difference.
I suppose, Giovanni, it's a bit like, you know, we've all got mobile devices and, you know, good for making phone calls. We still do that, and we can send a message, and maybe we get our email, and that's lovely. And suddenly we've discovered greater functionality on these devices than ever before, in the same way as we're discovering greater functionality in the world of enterprise development. Giovanni, final perspective from you, please, about our brave new world.
Yeah, so technology is becoming even more crucial, as we have discussed in the last hour and a half. And I think from this perspective, it will be easier, potentially, the work of the CIOs and the CTOs, because previously there was, let me say, a long process to explain technology and the potential of technology to all the other colleagues, to the CEOs and so on. So I think now is the technology language potentially is becoming a lingua franca, as you and Megan has said before, is going to be speak from everybody. So I think from this perspective, I'm seeing CEOs and CTOs with the doors open from their colleagues to not just to explain what technology can do, but what is the partnership in each of the domains between the technology functions in the company and the commercial functions and the finance function and so on and so forth. So this is from a dynamics perspective inside the companies. What is comforting me, as we said before, we, as one of the big technology companies in the country and in the continent, we continuously innovate and invest, which is the best recipe for the bright progress of this country.
I'm going to check whether or not the insurance on phones works, as I just dropped mine on the floor, but it hit my foot first. So that's fine. To be more of a medical aid claim, I think, than a claim on a broken device. Giovanni, thank you very much indeed. Megan, to you, and thank you for introducing us to your animals and to your family.
Thank you. Absolutely.
It's been lovely seeing everybody. And to everybody who has signed up today and who has joined us and has been with us, and your questions, those have been fabulous as well. Thank you very much. Thank you for your responsiveness in terms of the polls that were conducted today. They helped inform our conversation today. I hope that you found this useful. On behalf of MTN Business, thank you very much for joining us. The poll, the survey, the little red block at the bottom of your screen, that is where we'd like you please to go and give us some feedback on today's session so that you can be better served into the future to get more of what you need as we go into this bright new world. And it is an exciting environment. environment. It's a very, very exciting environment. And to Giovanni and to Megan for their expertise today, thank you very much indeed. The team will be sending a mailer to all attendees today to make sure that you get all the follow-ups you need and you get to answer any more questions, of course, that you might have as well. From us, thank you very much indeed. From Megan's entire family, the pets and the Hardy Dars. Giovanni,
Thanks,
thank
Bruce.
you very much. Cheers,
Thank
everybody.
you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.